my largest bulbophyllum by a lot. This is Wilbur Chang, but as a bulbophyllum it's also my favourite, even though it's never bloomed, and the reason is tiny little short stubby rhizomes, so the plant stays in its pot and doesn't climb out, and it has beautiful leathery strappy leaves. Now this plant at the moment, that was its last two latest growths. The leaves split and pushed a new growth out either side. And have they bloomed? Have they? Hell. But they've grown up, nice big bulbs, nice leaves, and now at the other end of the plant it's virtually doing the same thing and pushing out two new leads. Well, I presume they're going to be bulbs. But anyway, this one's got nice roots underneath it. Oh, would you believe it? Look what I've just spotted. Right at the base there, just under my finger. That could be another new growth, or it could be a spike. I wonder if there's one at the other end. Oh, that one's a bit deeper in the pot. Well, who knows? That could be a spike, in which case that'll be its first bloom. But I'd keep that plant for a while, quite a while, even without blooming. I just like it. Looks nice. Yeah? It's only ever had one real badly damaged leaf that I sliced off the end, but apart from that, this is its oldest leaf, so that's probably come to the end of its time. So it has no leafless bulbs on this one, so you know, the oldest one starting to go is not a problem, and the latest leaves are up to good size and everything, so yeah, very happy with that one. But I would like it to bloom, that would be nice. Like Wilbur Chan, these four bulbophyllums came from Archie as a gift, along with another one I'll get to later. It's in a totally different place. But this is the bit that I don't like about bulbophyllums, and to me it's just non-appealing. Look at the length of the rhizomes here, yeah? And then from there over to the back, and then from there over to here. You know, there's only 4 bulbs in that pot. Anyway, its latest growth was trying to climb out of the pot, and I managed to bring it round into the centre of the pot, peg it down so that the roots got straight into the pot. It's a reasonable sized bulb with a reasonable leaf, but that's as far as that one's got. So that allegedly is Bulbophyllum crassipes, but Archie wasn't sure, so we'll have to wait and see with that one. Right, over here, let's do this one first. This is another one. Look at the length of these rhizomes, yeah? And this decided to shoot out back here, and this is its latest growth. And it's only just in the pot, and it isn't in it properly. I think I might try and get that round and do like I did with the other one and peg it down. It's got a lovely new leaf on it, you know, good size, much bigger than anything before. But those roots are just aerial. They need to get in something, and they won't where it is now. And that one is Delatescens. Yeah, I need to peg that thing down and at least try and get some of the roots at least in the media, and then the next growth will probably come out of that one. Well, whichever way it goes, hopefully I can keep it in the pot and not let it climb out. So that's that one. This one's a worry. This is Deary, and it headed off in 2 directions. And this is one of the directions. Grew a new growth, promptly dumped the leaf. Grew another new growth, and the leaf virtually disintegrated, half of which I had to cut off. And then at the other end, it grew this new growth with a nice leaf, and is now pushing out another one. Up this end, it also aborted a new growth. The back end of this plant is not right, and before I put this back on the shelf, that's going to get a knife down in there, and I'm taking this part of the plant off, because whatever's wrong with it, I don't want getting into the rest of the plant. So okay, that will leave only half the plant, but at least it's half the plant with good leaves and a new growth. So I'm not unpotting it or doing anything, I'm just going to literally cut that rhizome and take that bit out, and then we'll see what happens with the other end of the plant that doesn't seem to be doing too bad. Right, that's that job done. I'd rather do a job when I think of it. I put some cinnamon on the rhizome, and you also know me, when I cut into a rhizome it gets a very, very close inspection. So we had no pretty purple colours, So the plant is safe from that point of view, and what's left doesn't look too bad, but that bit's been annoying me for a while, and it just, you know, while I'm taking a closer look and filming, I thought that bit of that plant needs to come off. If there's anything in it that's transmittable, it's gone now. That's the best thing to do with that one, I think. Now this Zygopetalum is unusual for me because it's alive and it's doing pretty good. It's got 2 new growths on it. I've filmed these recently, so I'm not going to dwell on it. This is Louisendorf, and whether these 2 new growths are actually going to produce a spike or not, I don't know. A lot of zygos produce their spikes when the growths are quite young, some of them when they're about halfway grown, and some zygos wait till the bulbs are almost full size. So there may be some spikes to come on these 2, but no sign at the moment. Just good new growths with good roots pushing out. I'll live with that for now. Now this is a no ID Zygopetalum hybrid, basically, and this one is helping me dispel 2 myths. The first myth I've already mentioned, that I kill zygos. Well, I don't anymore. And the second myth is that even if I manage to keep them alive, I can't get them to bloom. Well, we dispel that myth as well, because we're a nice strong spike. Now this is odd, this plant, because that's the smaller of the growths, which is already spiking. The larger isn't. It may well do, I don't know. It may have missed his chance, depends on how the plant sort of progresses. But we've got new roots coming out at the base of those new growths. We've got a reasonable root system on the rest of the plant, and 2 nice strong new growths, one with a spike. So, can't be bad. After all the deaths, we have life. And the last of the larger Zygopetalums, this one's not up to much. It has produced a new growth, far from mature yet, still growing in fact. Not much sign of root life at the base of that, but some of them don't push out their roots till the bulbs are mature. And this is got a strange name, it's Arta Ellie, variety Stonehurst, which once upon a time was awarded. Well, it'd be nice to see some blooms then, wouldn't it? But there's no sign of a spike on this growth. Quite honestly, the state the plant was in when I got it, I was happy to get a new growth and see it grow on. So we'll work with that for the time being. But I don't suspect that spike will bloom. I could be proven wrong. And the last one in this little set was one of the big box orchids, which probably didn't like the cold that much in the transport. This is for a small little plant, this is a mouthful. It's a cross, so it's not a Zygopetalum. It's Zygonesia Morasakii Kamadu, dark blue French spelling. And it's just starting something, which I hope will be a new growth. That doesn't want to be a spike on a plant like that. Not much root system in there, young plant, hopefully to grow on, but that's its hope there. If that's a nice new growth and it pushes on well, then that'll bring the plant back. But it's living but not doing well. Now this monster is actually a Coleogene despite its size. That's the tag. It's Moriana Magnifica Brockhurst. It says on the tag large white flowers. Well, it's right then, isn't it? These are large white flowers, but they're not just white. These golden throats in here are absolutely gorgeous and hairy. Hope the camera can show that. Anyway, this is its second spike. The first spike finished a few days ago, and I'm not going to cut that one because it goes right down into the centre of the rosette of leaves, so I'm going to let that one do its own thing because it will probably just die back on its own. And the third growth may or may not have a spike, so we might have a blind one out of the 3, but this is a hell of a drinker. It's a job to keep up with this one, it really is, and it needs a lot of water. But then again, you can just picture, you know, the rate of growth on these new growths is quite fantastic, and these are very large bulbs with very large leaves. A lot of the older bulbs are a bit shriveled because it lost its root system. Certainly as the last two bulbs were developing, it didn't have a good root system to support it. Well, it's now got a pot full of roots, and the latest growths that are either going to, well, one's bloomed, one's blooming, one may not, but they're producing new roots as well. So I've now got a strong root system under there, so as these growths mature and produce their bulbs, they should be nice big fat bulbs. But yeah, first time bloomer, and yeah, it's quite special. Okay, I'm going to start off with most of this shelf cleared off. In the main, apart from a few plants that are in bloom and are up there to be seen, things like that, this is mainly either young plants or kikis that live up here, so that they're all together. They're easier to just deal with than if they were all spread around. So these are they, and I'm going to go over these as a group, basically. The first two are both Dendrobium kingianum, and I'd like to think they are the species. There's a nice new growth on that one, just opening its leaves. The latest growth on this one would be this, but what I'm interested in on these two is the fact that there are new roots growing, because this is in large chunky bark and these are young plants. Yeah. I think they were sold. These are big box plants out of the big box. These would be ones that wouldn't have suffered in the cold because they'd probably love it. But these two, that bark is too big for plants of this size with that sort of size root system. So both of those are going to one side to go out in the kitchen. I'm about to have a kitchen session, so those can go in some smaller media that will be more suitable for their roots. This is a bulbophyllum that's arrived recently. I'm never going to remember who gave me what, I just can't. Sorry. But it was a gift, and it's Bulbophyllum tingabarinum, or tingabarinum, whichever you want to say. It's got a lovely new growth on it, and it's not a bad little plant, and I don't think this gets big, and it has got quite short rhizomes, so you can stay. And this one, it was actually on my list of things to look out for, and then it just turned up. And the reason I wanted to look out for it is because the blooms are attractive and it's got short rhizomes, so that's to stay. Quite happy with that one. This is my rhodostictum that has bloomed on every new growth so far, and the blooms last over 3 months, so that's good stuff. The latest new growth, for the first time, is going to have a third leaf. So each new growth is getting better. It went from 1 bloom to 2 blooms, and now it's got a third leaf, so that's yet a stronger growth. Only seems to ever want to push up one growth at a time at the moment, but even though this blooms, this is a young plant. And yeah, I'm pleased with that growth. That's pushed on well. It's going to be taller and better than anything previous. That's progress. That's all you can hope for. Until eventually the latest growth will be as big as it's ever going to get. Hopefully by then we're getting more than one at a time. But it's coming on. Okay, these next two, these are kikis. This is Dendrobium moniliform. Where's the mother plant? There's the mother plant up here, so that's what it's aiming at. And at the moment it keeps missing. It's not doing very well, those kikis. They often do that. You take the kikis off with some open leaves and some active roots, and they just stall and they sit there and do nothing. I mean, that one's probably died, so that's 1 out of 3. The other 2 have still got green leaves on, but no signs of growth at the base. They may or may not grow. This one, I've been told twice what it is, and I've twice forgotten what it is. It's one of the big box orchids, but it's one that lost a tag. Obviously a young plant. It has 1 single leaf left, so that's all the photosynthesis it's going to get, but it is just starting to push some roots out. I've got a feeling that could do with being in some smaller media, or better still, me remembering to water it a bit more often, because that is bone dry. So despite being on the top shelf, it keeps getting neglected. These tiny little pots with large bark, they don't hold their water. Right, this is Nora Tokunaga, come on, wake up. It's on the label, crossed with Aberrant, so Latoria type. And this is quite a nice plant at the moment. It's looking quite nice. And at the moment, it has a lovely strong new growth pushing out. We'll see how that one progresses. I don't believe that's bloomed yet. It could still bloom out of that growth. Typical Latoria though, it teases, you know, produces its nice big bulb with the bulbous bits at the top and its nice strong green leaves with a sheath, and then it sits there and it sits there and it sits there. And sometimes it'll actually grow on and produce blooms, and other times they just sit there. But anyway, at least that one's got a new growth coming, so that's doing okay. This is probably another Latoria type, looking at it quickly. Yep, this is Macrophyllum variety Turnertense. What's going on with this one? This was 2 plants. This is another one came out of the big box, but it's been repotted. Now, it's 2 plants. I remember doing that. And the right-hand plant currently has 1, 2, 4 new growths coming out of that. What's now the left-hand plant, because I turned the pot round. The other one has 1 tiny new growth down tucked in there, and no sign of any others yet. But you know, one of those is going to take off now with 4 new growths. That's going to push on well. The other one's going to lag behind a little bit, but the one without so many new growths has actually got more bulbs and more leaves. So I think they will eventually catch up with each other. I don't think that's truly blooming size yet, but it could be, because it's one I don't know. So I'm just waiting for it to grow on and you know, grow some new bulbs, see what size they are. If these new growths push up twice the size of the ones I've already got, then obviously it wasn't blooming size, was it? But we'll wait and see. Right, these last two are my Kikis basically. Actually, they're not. This is Comic King, so this was actually a gift from Rachel. It was one Kiki that's lost its leaves now, but it did produce a new growth, and that recently bloomed. Just defied all logic, but that's not going to get watered now. That's going out in the kitchen. The base of the plant is too high, and just looking at my records, that's been in that pot since I got it. That's too long, so I'm going to repot that one while I'm at it. This is a piece of a very strange plant. I haven't filmed the mother plant yet, but it's a dendrobium, and it's called Lovely Virgin Angel. And the mother plant will not grow from the base, and I've had it quite a few years. It just keeps pushing kikis out that then root. And I thought, well, I'm going to take one of them off and see if I can get it to grow properly. And at the moment, it's behaving, and it is producing a new growth at the base, something the mother plant has never done. So it's just a matter of pushing that on now. You know, I mean, it's got some active roots coming out with new root tips. Let's stop them growing into the side of the pot and push them down in the media. That'll help. And let's get that new growth going on that one. And this is, or rather these are, Dendrobium Stardust Firebird, and endearingly known as the Kiki machine. But if you can get the flipping thing to bloom nicely, the blooms are actually gorgeous. There's a lovely depth of orange and patterning on the lip. And I wasn't expecting this to bloom, I must admit, because these are Kikis. I chucked the mother plant out in disgust because it looked so awful, and did nothing but produce Kikis over the full length of the canes. I thought, well, if you're going to play games like that, you can go and play them under the hedge, and that's where it went. However, the Kikis I took off, one of them is growing from the base, so you can stay. And one of the others has got a Kiki halfway up, but it did bloom. And the other is one of the big box. I don't need to worry about the name on this one not having a tag, because it's the only one in the cup. But it's in very, very large bark and perlite, and it's quite difficult to hydrate this, or keep it hydrated. But it has got some new growths from the base, quite a few, and those are now starting to push out roots. Yeah, it's still playing games, it is still producing some Kikis, like they do. But what I'm waiting for on this one is for this new growth on here to start pushing some roots. As soon as I see that, blooms or not, this lot is all going in one pot, and it's going to get strapped up right, let these new growths take off, and then see where we go from there. And if we get anything like that next year, I'll be pleased. But it needs to behave itself. It's on the danger list. You keep growing kikis for me, mate, and you're not long for this world. I want a nice plant with lots of growths coming out from the base, looking like a proper dendrobium. But we'll see what we can do. But they are going to get merged. They are the same plant. It's pointless keeping them in separate pots. So we'll have a nice pot full of what were kikis once, and then we'll see if we can grow them on sensibly. This little thing has been an anomaly for a long time because it was a gift from Arthur at Burnham's when my daughter went into hospital, and it didn't have a name, but somebody's identified it, and yeah, they're right, because I've seen them for sale at Burnham's since, and yes, it is this plant, and it's a strange one. It's Sarcochilus hartmannii. And the fact that it's doing some new roots now, and it's been in that pot since I got it, that's going to one side to add to the list of tasks in the kitchen, but that's a quick one. Well, this is Dendrobium Spring Dreamer pollen, and it's still in bloom. It's been in bloom for absolutely ages. A trickle, followed by quite a lot at once, and now just you know, the ones bringing up the rear basically, but this one's going out in the kitchen too. I'm getting quite ruthless as I go round. It's been in its pot a while, and it's now pushing out 2 strong new canes from this section of the plant, and there's another one towards the rear, but it's now right over to the edge of its pot, and with all these new roots coming out, now's a good time to get that part of the plant back there and take this back end off. These canes are from when I got it, actually. Somebody else cut those like that. I mean, I wouldn't dream of cutting canes there. If I'm going to cut them, I cut them at the base. But yeah, there's 1 or 2 of the older canes can come off, and this back end removed, and then the whole plant can just go farther over in the pot so that the new growths have got somewhere to be and room for the next lot. You know, following a repot, the media will be fresh. So let's get that one out the way. The list is getting big. And this is one of 3 Miltonias that I actually bought from an eBay site in Madeira, and all 3 of them were badly infested with Fusarium. One of them didn't make it. This is one of the ones that did, and this is Miltonia Queen Anne, so a hybrid. And quite honestly, it's that the back end of the plant was treated and it responded well and promptly pushed up a reasonable growth, followed by 2 good strong growths and active roots. Telltale signs, obviously, lack of vigour, well, that's gone, and root tips that just fade and go brown and just don't grow. So both of those symptoms are now gone, and I don't know whether I can show this, but both of these new growths now have what looks like a spike coming. That's highly unlikely to be a growth coming out from that position, given its growth pattern that shows now. So that's probably a spike. And I think the other one's got one too, starting just. Only just noticed these. Yes, down in there. So it looks like both of those new growths are now going to bloom. So the last telltale sign is, are the blooms good? Or are they distorted with colour breaks and things like that, which means there's still some of that flipping dreaded F in there. But I think that one is now safe. It's cured. And in time, I mean, obviously the next 2 growths are going to be way off the mount. So it might be time to either remount it or pot it. And at that point, the bit that I know is infected can be cut off to isolate it and dump it. It's pretty easy to tell the back end. There's a new growth started there that will not grow and won't produce roots. That's the area that's all bunged up with the Fusarium. But from the point it grew on from there after its treatment, it seems to have done well. So, and that'll be the first time I've seen the blooms on that. So it should be good. Coming on nicely, that one. And this is the other Miltonia that came from Madeira. Same symptoms, but it's managed to push out 2 new growths that look pretty good, green leaves. It's done a good root system since its treatment. This is Miltonia castanei, and I can't remember whether that's actually a natural hybrid or an actual species. The new growths are still too young to show signs of blooming yet because the pseudobulbs aren't swelling, but there's no reason why it shouldn't bloom. It may not, but it's a wait and see, but at least it's recovered, you know. 2 out of 3, not bad. This one's Oncidium Tiny Twinkle. So it's like a miniature, if you know what I mean. But this one's chucking out new growths all over the place. I mean, there's 2 at the base there, another one, one at the top in the middle, one absolutely in the middle, another one, good one here pushing on nicely, and at least one round this side too. So each one of those new growths, when they mature, will produce 1 and possibly 2 spikes. This did an excellent blooming last time round, so I don't expect any different this time. Lovely little miniature, short on space. You know, the twinkles are good stuff, and this is Tiny Twinkle, even smaller, but just as fragrant. You know, smaller blooms, many of them, very fragrant. Worthwhile little plant. Now these 2 are Dinemma polybulban, sometimes seen as Encyclia or Epidendrum, but strictly speaking it's Dinemma now, and this has recently been attacked. This is the old base of the plant. I decided to mount it to see if it will sprout out. It may or may not, but it's worth a go. And these were all the pieces that were taken off of there and mounted separately right down the base of the mount. So it's now got plenty of room to climb up and extend, because it does do that. It's a creeping climber type growth habit. This one will take off, that's not a problem, but whether this one sprouts out or not, I don't know. Very tiny, but very, very attractive flowers, and fragrant too. So yeah, it's a lovely little miniature, but it is a bit rampant. Well, these are 3 of the young plants out of the big box from Beatrix, and they're all coming on. I'm quite pleased, because you know, when you disturb young plants, it's not the best thing to do, but sometimes you just have to. This is this is Cattleya Little Lemon Drops and Acilia. That's supposed to be Encyclia, spelling mistake. I've only just noticed that. A bit Telliana. Yeah, so I think that's going to be quite a nice cross. Little Lemon Drops is a good Cattleya. Nice shaped blooms and everything like that. What the cross with an Encyclia is going to do to it, I don't know. But that's a wait and see. But it's producing a good root system. It's attaching well. Yeah, that's taken off. No worries with that one. This little one is a mouthful. It's Cattleya Pintada Rusada cross with something else. I'll have to write another tag on that one. But again, it's pushed out some new roots, and they're attaching and they're growing. So again, it's got a hold. It will now progress. This little one, again, it's just getting going with some new roots. Obviously a young plant again, and that is Cattleya Mary Chen crossed with Duvenii. I have no idea what the blooms are going to look like on these. They're young plants. I'm quite happy to grow them on. They're mounted so they don't get in my way. So 3 nice young plants that are growing. And have roots now, so they can hydrate and get going. Good stuff. Well, how on earth I'm supposed to film this and get it in a single shot? I'm actually stood in the lounge at the moment, and I suspect it's only just in, and you probably don't even know what I'm filming because it's jumbled up. Basically, this is my Brassia Chieftain Ludlows. Again, it's extending away from the mount, and quite honestly I need to deal with that, but not until after it's finished blooming and there's a sign of a new growth. It's going to get very, very heavy if it keeps extending away from its mount, so I'll probably have to deal with that. But it currently has rather a long spike that I'm a bit paranoid about, and these blooms should be open very soon now. You can see that the tips are starting to split, and bearing in mind a bud is basically 3 sepals and everything else on the bloom is inside, you can see how big that bloom's going to be. Yeah, those sepals are about 5 inches. Yeah, so when they open, and the other two petals and the tiny little lip come out, we're probably looking at least 9 inches across these blooms. But they're spidery blooms, so they're tiny in the middle with the great big long spidery leg things sticking out. But this should be open soon. Plant's doing well, but it's quite difficult to hydrate. It's got a flipping good root system, I've got no problem with it, but I think next time this gets dealt with, after it's finished blooming and the next new growth starts, I think I'm going to have to put it in a pot. It's just going to get so far away from the mount that none of the roots are going to be in anything, and these roots on this plant have got what I call new root syndrome. You can even soak this plant for half an hour and most of these thick new roots here will still be white. The older roots hydrate well, but yeah, it's a little difficult to hydrate at the moment by pouring water on it. I do chuck it in the Vanda bucket every now and again and give it a good soak, but yeah, I think it may have to go in a pot once the blooms are finished and we get a new growth going. Then we'll see what we can do with that one. But it's a large plant and produces massive spikes. That spike's got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 blooms on it. The last spike had 4, and that took up half the grow room, so we got 9 this time. And you can see obviously the latest growth is much bigger and better than anything before. So good progress, very pleased with the plant, love the blooms, fragrant as well, lovely patterns and everything. It's got everything going for it apart from its size of spike and that problem with the roots, but yeah, I think it'll go in a pot next time.